All right. I think that's it. I think we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. My name is Mackenzie Jackson. I'm one of the developer advocates here at GitGuardian, and I'm super excited to be joined today with Cédric Teyton. So, Cédric, welcome to the webinar, and can you just introduce yourself for a little bit to everyone?
Yes. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Mackenzie, for the invitation. I'm Cédric. I'm one of the co-founder of Promyze. I'm also the CEO of the company. So Promyze is a startup, French startup, working on code quality and working on a solution for sharing best coding practices.
Excellent. All right. Let me just share my screen here, and we'll dive straight in. So, okay, there we are. That's what I was hoping would happen. All right, so just to let everyone know, this is going to be a participation-filled webinar. We want everyone to join in on the chat. We have a section down the bottom called polls. We'll be asking some questions along the way. And we also have a Q&A session. So if you are participating a lot, you can win the chance to win a GitGuardian swag bag. We will announce the winner at the end of the webinar. And just remember, in the Ask a Question section, this is the best place to be able to kind of interact with us. And you can also upvote other people's questions. So if there's something that you want to know someone else has asked, then make sure you give that an upvote. So first of all, while we're still waiting for a few people to join in, let us know in the chat whereabouts you're tuning in from. So I'll start. I am in Paris at the moment, but I'm originally from New Zealand. Cédric, whereabouts are you tuning in from?
From Bordeaux in France.
Bordeaux. That's if you're not familiar with France, Bordeaux is where all the wine comes from. It's a great place to visit.
That's correct.
You need an extra long weekend. All right. So we have someone from India. Welcome, Noel. Welcome to the stream. Where's everyone else from? St. Paul, Minnesota, USA. Vietnam, Bangalore, Bordeaux too. Yeah, we have another person from Bordeaux. Denmark, Atlanta, Chile, Germany, Florida. Yeah, a lot of places. A lot of people from France. Fantastic. Another one from Bordeaux. Excellent. It's great to see everyone coming in from here. All right. So we're going to keep moving through. So today's going to be all about secrets management. We're going to talk about the different secret management solutions that are available. We're going to talk about some pros and cons of them. And then we're going to talk about why this is so difficult to scale in a large organization and talk through how we can try and achieve this. So in the poll center, let us know. There's no shame in this. We all, we're not expecting everyone to use the best practices before the webinar, but let us know how you're currently managing your secrets in your organization or for your personal projects. Are you managing them inside your Git? This could be with an encrypted file or with a .env file, using a cloud KMS service like AWS KMS or AWS Secrets Manager, a Vault, or anything other. Let us know. It's going to be very interesting to see how everyone is managing the secrets currently. So just to get everyone on the same page, we're first going to talk about what are secrets. Now, if you've been to another webinar, you might have seen this slide, but this is the only slide that I have in there that's the same. But when we're talking about secrets in software, we're typically talking about digital authentication credentials. So these are API keys. These are / kind of infrastructure keys. They might be database credentials. They could be your security certificates. It's really anything that's been made to be used programmatically. These are kind of collectively what we call secrets. So these can be really highly sensitive, but they also need to be widely distributed. So it's a bit of a challenge when we come with kind of handling these and how we distribute these to all the developers that we have and we're working with. So how do you store secrets? So this is a really challenging problem for the reasons that I talked about before. So our secrets need to be kind of centrally stored. They need to be tightly wrapped with layers of authentication around them. but then they also need to be widely used by various developers. They need to be used by our application, by our servers. So we end up with this problem that these secrets end up sprawled all over the place. So, Cédric, have you had much have you had much experience dealing with these secrets in your team? You're the CEO of a software company. Yes. What do you kind of see in how these secrets are kind of stored on your perspective?
We've seen many different contexts and different methods to share and manage secrets. The one that we unfortunately see the most is not really secret management system, because this is something that developers share, in Slack or something like this, and sometimes you can find these secrets directly on the Git repository. So unfortunately, I think there are so many teams doing like this, and in some other contexts, we saw some more advanced solution like Vault, but I think you will discuss about it later.
Yeah.
What about you at GitGuardian? How do you manage those secrets, if you can tell?
Yeah, we can. So we use Vault. We use a system called HashiCorp Vault at GitGuardian, but we also actually use a hybrid of other systems to predominantly Vault, but we have some other systems in place which allow us to kind of share not sensitive secrets, but still kind of in that category. So we'll kind of get into that. But I think as you kind of grow, then what starts off maybe as a common solution ends up to be quite complex. So if we look at, I guess, the types of ways that you can store secrets. So the one that Cédric just mentioned that he sees the most of is the kind of storing secrets unencrypted in places. And we see a lot of people that store their secrets unencrypted in Git. So maybe a private Git repository in a .env file. And I mean, the logic here is that it's private, it's password protected, so therefore that's safe. Well, I'll get into that in a minute, but generally, please don't do this. It's a bad practice to get into. Then we also see that, I mean, Git is a great central place. I mean, I'm sure you would agree, Cédric, that where people Git is kind of central to all developers. It makes it easy to share information.
Yes.
So when it comes to small teams and projects, storing them in Git makes sense, or at least from a convenience point of view. But if we can encrypt them, we can add another layer of security. But for bigger teams, for organizations, I think I'll get into this too, but this is generally not a great practice to get into. And then we start getting into some sophisticated solutions. So secrets managers, some KMS, and using vaults. And so I would say that kind of vaults, what I'm putting under the category of vaults, which are the kind of these dedicated systems, they can be quite advanced and cumbersome to set up. So, I mean, Cédric, I'm sure you would agree, and you've seen this. You're dealing with sharing best practices in how you're doing and what you're doing at Promyze. These large systems, they can be quite cumbersome to set up.
Yes, because maybe we will discuss about it later, but this is a huge system, and you need to configure it correctly in order to really benefit from this tool. And this really become like a central system in your application, because it manages all your secrets. And if you decide to manage a vault on your own, it becomes really critical. So you need to make sure this is highly available and so on. So this is a good strategy, but you need to make sure you are ready to deploy and to manage a vault system on your own.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And we even had a question before the webinar started, asking for kind of talking about this problem, that Vault is very complex, very cumbersome to set up. It's very kind of has a high technical cost to it to do it right, and asking for some alternatives. So I will get into that as we go through. But let's have a look at some of the options that we had and go through why these are kind of less than ideal practices, let's say. So the first one that we have up here is, we have storing secrets inside your Git repository, say in a .env file, maybe it's a .config file, a YAML file, in these password protected, these private Git repositories. And this makes it really easy to share with your team, right? I mean, the convenience of this is fantastic, but
Yes.
there are
But
some
why?
serious problems to this.
Yeah,
What was that, Cédric?
Yes, why? Because as you say, it's very easy to manage, but I'm curious to better understand why. Is it so much a bad practice?
Well, I guess I think one of the reasons why this is such a common practice is that it's not widely understood why Git repositories are not good for storing secrets. So one of the main reasons is that when we're dealing with these highly sensitive strings, we need to be able to keep close eye on where they end up and where they sprawl to. So we need to have audit logs, who's accessed them and where they've ended up. If they end up in your Git repository, it's going to be cloned onto multiple different machines. So all the developers working in the project. So immediately you've lost visibility over where your secrets are. Immediately you have multiple versions of this .env file, and Git keeps a history of everything. So you could be 1,000 commits down in your project, and you may inadvertently open source. Twitch recently had their source code inadvertently open sourced. And deep in the history, you might have some .env files that were once upon a time managed there. So it's really important that when we do store secrets, that we have audit logs on them. So I think that, but the reason why it's such a common practice is, I guess, kind of a lack of understanding of why that is, particularly in junior developers. And it's something that I used to do a lot of too. I mean, I stand on my soapbox now preaching about it, but I was once a developer storing secrets in Git as well. So, I mean, moving on, we can store our secrets inside a private Git repository. And this time we've encrypted our secrets. So we have a ciphertext file that can't be easily broken. And I mean, and then we can share this, and anyone with the master keys to this can decipher this. So I think what I'll do is I'll just show you a look, guys. If you're not familiar, let's have a look at what this actually looks like. So I have a project here on my screen. We have a .env file with some. These are fake credentials, so don't try and exploit them. But if we're wanting to share this .env file, we can use a project called Git-Secret, and we can create some files in here. One thing it does automatically add is a .gitignore file. So great practice to always have one of these. But let's say we want to encrypt this .env file. What I can do is add myself as someone that can access this. And just like in Git, I can add this .env file, and then we can hide it. Git-Secret hide. And what this does is it creates this file here, .env.secret, which is just kind of a binary file. It's unreadable. But we can actually delete this, and we can share this file in our Git repository, and then people that have the master key can then reverse that. So then we kind of regenerate back our .env file. But so this is okay. It's okay if you're working in a small team. It's okay if you're working on a personal project. I think any cybersecurity professional will tell you that it's not. But as the developer in me will say that, I mean, if we're not always going to set up a vault, right? So this can be okay for storing certain secrets.
Yes. So does it mean that if you have like 20 or hundreds of Git repository, this solution is not really suited for this context?
Absolutely. I think that when we're really talking about kind of being able to share small projects, because not only do you have to share this master key, you have this single point of failure, and your ciphertext file, although it can't easily be broken, right? It's going to end up sprawl. And again, you have no visibility over this. And then you've also got the chicken egg situation, which we deal with in secrets management, which is like how do you distribute the master key? So if you have remote developers, so and then when you're talking about multiple Git repositories, it can quickly kind of get out of control. And there is kind of like a hybrid system between this and a KMS, which is coming out, called SOPS, SOPS, and it kind of leverages AWS KMS to be able to do this. And this is like quite an elegant solution, but again, it doesn't have that power that we're talking about managing secrets in a team. Then this is certainly not the solution for that. Okay. So then we can become a little bit more complicated, and we can start talking about using key management systems and secrets managers. So they're slightly different things. Like if we're talking about AWS KMS, usually this is designed to store data in transit at rest, but it can also be used to store secrets. And then AWS has a dedicated kind of secrets manager that we deal with. So here we have a similar scenario where we have these developers that are connecting to the cloud provider, and they're accessing this encrypted database full of secrets. But we also have our services here. So like our server can connect to it. So, I mean, if you really quickly want to look at to see what this looks like, is that once our secrets are stored in our KMS or our secrets manager in AWS, we can call this using an API. And so in here, I'm calling the secrets manager, and I'm asking for my AWS secret key. And when you execute that, then it will return to me my secret value. But there's an important component here when we're dealing with this, which makes this so much more secure than anything that we've discussed about. And that is because we can actually get rid of the developers, the humans handling the secrets themselves. So this is an important concept when we're talking about managing secrets at scale. So right now, our application kind of connects to the cloud provider through its authentication service, and it can access the databases, but the developers never have to actually handle those secrets. So this is an important step along the way of kind of reducing the human input into this, and reducing the kind of amount of handling that a developer has to do on their secrets. So limiting that. Does that make sense to Cédric? Does that kind of resonate with you and what you've been kind of dealing with and trying to get through these best practices?
Yes, completely. And I've seen, I'm not sure, but I think also there are some APIs that you can use. There are some SDK implementation for JS, Java, Python, PHP, and so on. Can you confirm that?
Yeah. I mean, and certainly in like different services have different features of this. One of the great things about using a cloud provider and the built-in like secrets managers, so is if your application is hosted on AWS, then you have this streamlined connectivity where AWS can provide you kind of code snippets, and it kind of works very intuitively, and it comes through. The problem comes, though, as you're using multiple services. If you have something hosted in AWS or different components hosted in GCP, or you're trying to communicate with a GCP application, Google Cloud provider, then this kind of all becomes can all become quite cumbersome. But there's certainly some great benefits in being able to get things connected quickly. And when we're talking about the languages that we're using, moving quickly kind of through these and getting everything set up quickly. So we have one more kind of category in here, and I've called this vaults. Now, vault isn't really a technical term. It's just kind of HashiCorp Vault was one of the first really purpose-built products in and of itself that is used to kind of manage these secrets. And we also have some competitors out there, such as Keyless, which is kind of like a SaaS version of HashiCorp Vault. And these kind of manage what the secrets managers and the KMS does, but there's a conceptual difference where these are a dedicated like application in and of itself that you can host. They're agnostic to the technology that you're using. Doesn't matter if you're hosting it on AWS or GCP. There's certainly it's a lot easier to kind of connect all these different systems. The problem is, though, that when we're talking about kind of HashiCorp Vault particularly, and it's alluding to what one of the questions was at the start, was that like these are very cumbersome to set up. So, a solution, if you are looking for a solution to Vault that has all the same features, then Achilles is an interesting solution. It's a kind of, as I said, the SaaS version of that, but it has a lot of the same functionalities. And if we're talking about really kind of some of the differences here, is that I'm not going to list all the features that everything has, but the one element that I really find very useful in kind of categorizing these is this concept of having this dynamic secret here. So we have the same architecture where our developers are connected to our application or our server. They're authenticated and to the vault, which has access to the secrets. But we also have this area of this dynamic secret. So what that means is that Vault can have, let's call it a master key to AWS, an AWS kind of master key, which allows it to create secrets of itself. What this means is that when we deploy or if we're running live, we can create temporary kind of access tokens. So when we're talking, one of the major things about kind of managing secrets, we have to rotate regularly. We don't want to have long-lived secrets. And the best case scenario is having secrets that expire after their use. And with Vault, we can actually do this. So to use the example, of what a lot of people do is when they deploy their application, they generate their tokens. And once the application is deployed again, they remove those tokens and generate new ones. So that every time you deploy, this could be every day or every week, you're generating these new tokens and the old ones are expired. So this is a really fundamental thing of when we're talking about security, is having these short-lived credentials in here. And the other thing is, let's say that an attacker gets access to your server, to your applications, maybe your environment variables, it's able to export them. Then we're able to really quickly and really efficiently rotate all these credentials and move forward and limit access there. Or same being said, if they find old credentials. So this is a big problem. If anyone's had to deal with rotating a large amount of secrets after a breach or an unauthorized access, then it's a huge pain and it can break a lot of systems. But with Vault, if you have this set up so that it's auto-rotating secrets in the Vault and it's generating temporary secrets, then we can solve a lot of these problems. But very high technical setup cost in terms of trying to get this running, and you almost need kind of dedicated people to be able to run these. Like you can do certifications to kind of generate to kind of become a Vault expert. So, we kind of come to an interesting point. And Cédric, this is where you're really going to be able to provide some interesting inputs, because, if we look at it like this, we've kind of almost solved secret sprawl, right? If we look at the architecture we just had out, we have these dynamic secrets. The developers never touch secrets. So there's really no reason why these secrets sprawl. So, I was wondering, do you have kind of thoughts? You alluded at some on the start of why secrets, if we're using this kind of architecture, would still be released out into the wild. I know I'm putting you on the spot, but because you mentioned it earlier, I feel like it's okay.
I think we can still. One of the main mistakes comes from some human actions. Even if secrets are protected within a system like Vault, you still have a risk that some human get the secrets and somehow share it, make it public, even inside the company in a chat tool like Slack or something. You can't prevent stuff like this. So there is still a kind of risk, unfortunately.
But yeah, it's a perfect example, because I literally have the slide for the example that you just said, is that getting secrets this way, we still need them as a developer. We still need to test systems. So you can imagine a scenario where you need access to the database. You're trying to debug something, you need to work quickly, or you need to find information, and going through this cumbersome process to get database credential from the Vault can be horrible. But if someone already has that, then you can ask them to share them on Slack. Maybe that person has kept them because they remember the last time they had to deal with them. So we still have to have these handling of secrets. And not all secrets are created equally. We like to talk about Amazon accounts and secrets. We like to talk about Stripe keys and these highly sensitive things. But there's also a whole range of secrets that we need a lot of access to. They still need to be tightly wrapped and secured, but developers need to be able to use them. Let's say a Slackbot token. It's something that we need to physically have our hands on to be able to test something, and we can use sandbox keys, but we want to test it out when we're running as well. So we're always going to kind of bypass the best practices approach to be able to do this, especially if we don't know the sensitivity behind it. Another scenario could be that you're building a feature, you're working on a development branch, you're building a chat feature, you generate some keys for this. You're not following the best practices because you don't know that it exists. You commit this, maybe it gets cleaned up, but that commit history still kind of get pulls in, and that key's then exposed. Even if it ends up in Vault and secured in there, then it can still cause massive problems kind of moving on from that. So then we get to this kind of next slide, which is where I'm really going to lean on you a bit here, Cédric, and that is kind of scaling our best practices. So, I mean, one of the things that we have seen is that we have the technology, we have the tools and the systems to be able to protect our secrets effectively and efficiently. Yet it still doesn't need to be, still doesn't seem to kind of solve these problems. And that is kind of because we're not all following the best practices. Junior developers may not understand the risks associated with kind of leaking credentials, never taught the best practices in universities. We have engineering teams that have no consistent secrets management strategy or don't fully understand the risk of secret sprawl. And there's these difficult processes being set up on how to obtain these keys. This is a big one. No central point of documentation. Who has had to write documentation? And it can be a horrible experience when you're writing internal documentation. It can take a very long time. And the minute that you finish writing it, it's outdated. So you have to. So we can have these outdated documentation and processes that no longer work. And if we're not continuously updating that, then that can fail. So we can bypass this. And then, of course, we have a lack of tools to be able to do all these things, to be able to not just manage our secrets, but to be able to share best practices, to be able to kind of have these processes in place to catch them when the secrets leak.
So this is something, so just wanted to add that indeed junior developers, this is something which is constantly evolving because all the cybersecurity concepts are more and more taught at school and university, and this is a good thing. But most of the developers, when they have finished 5 years of study, they have no consideration about security, and so they really need to be trained. And we need companies really need to focus on these people to make sure they understand what is a sensitive data and so on.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely right. We're getting better at teaching this and understanding these concepts. But I mean, there's a lot to learn as a junior dev. Yes. That first job that you get is pretty overwhelming. There's a lot to learn at university. There's a lot to learn when you enter into the door. I don't know where managing API keys like securely it falls into this learning program, but I mean it's a huge risk. But I mean, when you're getting out the dates and you're getting ready to start your first job, it's not the first thing that pops up into your head.
Completely.
All right, let's have a look at the hang on, I just got to get my screen open up in here. Okay, so we have in the polls here, how do you manage your secrets? Other is 52%. So most amount of people manage it in other. Can you let me know in the chat section, how are you managing your how are you guys managing your secrets? It's going to be really interesting to see. But whilst we're waiting for that, Vault and Cloud KMS are kind of equal. And we have another poll in here that I'm going to be curious about, and that is, how do we all share best practices in your organization? So is it to use wiki tools? Do you rely on oral transmission? Do you have a README in your Git repo? You don't have any best practices, or let us know in the chat if there's some other way that you guys share your best practices and get the whole team on board. All right, I'm gonna quit sharing my screen, and I'm going to hand it over to Cédric, we're going to talk a little bit more about. There we are. Cool. I found the right button. So, Cédric, I'm going to leave it over to you, and we're going to talk about sharing the best coding practices and exactly what you guys are trying to achieve over at Promyze.
Yep. Thank you. Sorry, it's coming. Yep, okay. So, as I mentioned earlier, Promyze is a collaborative platform designed for best practices definition and sharing. So, in a few words, what is the main concept of Promyze? Today, we're mainly talking about security best practices. How do you manage secrets? And as a developer, how do you manage secrets in your code? You don't want to hard code some credentials, some API keys, and so on. So how can you make it? So this is this kind of best practices we can record in Promyze. So I will just take a few minutes after to show you the tools. I will be very quick, but you need to understand first what are the main concepts of Promyze. So this is mainly a 3-step process that will happen in Promyze. So imagine you are a team of developers. You are going to use Promyze with our set of plugins. We have developed some plugins which are very integrated to developers' tools, like your IDE or your web browser. So you can use it in VS Code, for instance, or also in GitLab or GitHub if you are doing your code review. And the basic idea is to identify easily in your code, in your project, some example and counter-example of best practices that have been followed according to you or not. So you are like contributing to Promyze just with a quick snippet selection and identify it as a best practice example. And then at some point in the week, every 2 weeks, your team is going to gather all together and have a 1-hour session. Is this something we call a craft workshop in our context? And the idea is to discuss about our best practices. Should we do like this? Should we instead do in another way? And so we are building a repository of best practices that can be shared with other teams in our company. And then the first step is the third step of Promyze is that thanks to our contribution, Promyze is going to help us directly in our IDE or during our code reviews in order to make some recommendation of best practices, because we are learning from the code examples we have identified previously. So this is a continuous process, and thanks to this, we can easily enrich Promyze with some best practices. So just to show you quickly how does it look like here on Promyze. I have a space from my team. Okay, so I assume the GitGuardian backend team is working with Promyze. Okay, we are going to have a craft workshop here. Okay, so just so that you imagine how a craft workshop happens. This is quite simple. We are seeing here some snippets that some developers have identified a few days ago before the workshop. So here in my context, I have quickly identified some example of best practices that I've named don't hardcode credentials for third-party services authentication. So as you can see, there is a huge problem here. But I have some credentials that have been hard-coded, okay? So this is something I may have catched using the Promyze web browser plugin, okay? So thanks to my web browser plugin, I can simply do something like this, right-click and tag selection as a practice example. And I can also do it with my VS Code, for instance. So I assume in the same way, as soon as I identify a code example, which according to me doesn't follow best practices, I can identify it with the Promyze plugin. And again, it will be sent to Promyze. Okay.
So you can do this during like a code review process. If you're conducting a code review and you're seeing something, you can add that immediately into that database of what's poor practice.
Yeah.
That's cool.
As soon as you see something that's according to you has not been followed and could be done differently, you just catch it with our plugins. It will be sent to Promyze, and we will discuss all together with our team during the craft workshop. And so this is the concept, and we are going to either validate, delete the practices, edit the practice if we are not if we don't really agree about the practice to follow. So really the idea is to make sure everyone has the same level of knowledge of what are the best practices to follow. So we're going to decide together what to do, how things should be done. So I have in this example something which should not be done, and I have other example of something that should be done according to me. So if I have to use credential, I have some proposition here to use some kind of global config that contains all the configuration, credential, and so on. And there is something we were talking about AWS KMS. This is an example of how we should use AWS KMS in our Node.js code, for instance. Okay, so the idea is to build a global config object, okay, with all the info about the database connection. And all these elements are computed thanks to the AWS KMS SDK. And thanks to this work, at the end of the craft workshop, I have created some concrete practices. Okay, so in this example, I have 3 practices. If we take this one, I can have a description, and I will have some example and counterexample. Okay, so we are building a repository of best practices with Promyze, and you can imagine that then I can build like a public catalog of best practices for my company, so that everyone in the company, new developers, existing developers in the company, will have access to this knowledge, how to manage secrets in our code. So that's basically the idea of Promyze.
I have a question kind of around what we're talking about in managing secrets and that, and because it all relates so much back to these best practices. Why is it so difficult? Or what have you seen? Why is it difficult to share best practices amongst your engineers, amongst your developers? Why is it something that's really hard to scale specifically?
Yes. First of all, within a team, it's not really easy because it's very complicated for teams to find a framework where we can discuss and have efficient interaction about our best practices, how to improve our best practices. And it's even more difficult within a company because you have plenty of teams, and it's often agile teams with 5, 6, 7 people within teams. So you may have in some companies dozens of teams, and they are not working together every day. So you need to find a way to generate technical interaction within all these teams, so that they can discuss together what should be the best practices, how are you doing, how do you manage secrets in your team, and so on. And so it's very hard, and that's why more and more you can observe some a community of practices that gather some developers that are very interesting in some topics like security, JavaScript, whatever you want. And it's very difficult because we are mainly focused on our team, on our project every day. And the global, aspect, this global perspective on what should be our best practices in the company, who should decide of these best practices, and how to spread, to disseminate this knowledge into every team. This is something very difficult, actually.
Yeah. Well, I think that's evident in what we see in kind of, I'm obviously focusing on secrets management, but it's something where, if you have the tools and you have the best practices, the problem shouldn't exist. Of course we know that it does because of this, but and that's kind of why. What I love about Promyze is just that it, as someone who's had to write documentation, I love that it can kind of be an ongoing task forever and not this kind of horrible, daunting thing that of maintaining these best practices throughout. I have one more question. When we're talking about managing best practices, what can Promyze really be utilized for, or like can it kind of replace the internal wiki completely? Can it does it kind of circumsede the other elements? Like what can we really use, kind of leverage it for?
Promyze actually can be used to record best practices that really related to source code, test code. It can cover a wide range of best practices. So we can define some best practices for clean code architecture, some design patterns, some rules related to security, accessibility, green IT, performance, tests, unit test, end-to-end testing, and so on. So it's very we really can cover many aspects of best practices. So this is mainly the main goal of Promyze. We are not here to replace some technical documentation about the code, how it works, and so on. It's more how you should do such thing and what you shouldn't do. And this is something which is very hard to maintain, as you said, because you're constantly evolving your methodologies, your ways to do such or such thing, to implement such or such thing. So we really try to add some features to make this repository up to date and make sure everyone in the company has the right knowledge of the best practices to follow.
All right. So in a way, if I understand correctly, you kind of extrapolating some of the best practices out from this documentation, making it much easier to update, maintain, and share within the organization.
Yes, because it's very integrated to developers' ecosystem.
All right. So we're coming down to the kind of more Q&A section in now. I know we had some problems with the stream. I think some people lost us, but I think it should all be back to normal now. I'm not sure what happened. I was getting messages, but let's have a look at the poll. The winning tool of how we share best practices in the organization is with internal wiki tools, which is unsurprising. And to be frankly, from everything that Cédric just said, the goal is not to kind of replace these completely. The goal is to extrapolate some of the best practices and make it easier to update. So very interesting. Thanks for everyone that's participated in that poll. So, I mean, just before we get into the Q&A section of this, I want to talk about kind of combining some of these things together. So, I mean, how do we scale secrets management? So we know from what we've seen that using the tool, that having a KMS, having a vault is not enough. The solution itself we need to build on. So it's a very important component, but we also need to add, be able to share best practices. So something which Promyze can do to be able to kind of create this and make sure that everything maintains updates. A very important element of being able to share that information in secrets management. And then we need tools that really kind of enforce these and catch this. So obviously, GitGuardian, if you don't know about GitGuardian, we detect secrets in source code. So we can do this on the developer side. So we can scan commits before they reach your Git repository. If there's secrets in there, we can block it. So this kind of like it enables people to follow the best practices that have been set up using the tools like Promyze. So this is really quite powerful, particularly for developers. And then the last step that you need is that if we do all of this perfectly, we're still dealing with humans, and we're not going to be able to capture everything. There's still a human component in here. So secrets are going to leak, particularly in large organizations. So we need a tool that can scan these in real time to be able to pick them up. And that's the GitGuardian's core product, is being able to scan public and private repositories and alert you when you have a secret that has been leaked in there, so that you can rotate it and move on. And the earlier that you pick these up, the less of a problem that it can become. Because once an attacker breaches into a system, then then we have a multiplying effect of the amount of systems that we need to then kind of go through and work out. So, I mean, just quickly on GitGuardian, make sure you check out some of our developer tools. So on our client side, what we can help with developers is we have our tool GG-Shield. So there'll be links for this. There's a takeaway document that I will share in the chat where everyone can view further readings. But GG-Shield is a great tool. It's free. You can install it in your CLI, and it will automatically scan for secrets when you make your commits. And then we also have free versions of our server scanning, which you can plug into your GitHub account or GitLab account and immediately scan them and detect secrets. The most important thing is that you're going to get visibility over these secrets. So, I mean, this is what that product looked like. It's a SaaS tool. It's a SaaS product, and you can sign up for it on GitGuardian.com. So, with the sponsored messages out of the way, we can move on to some questions. So we already have some questions in here, quite a few actually. So first one we kind of already touched on. HashiCorp Vault is really complex. What are some solutions there? So, I mean, Achilles is one that I mentioned, but there's also some others that have been come up here, like KeyPass and other areas. So I'm not here to tell you which solution is going to be the best, but there are solutions depending on what you're after. HashiCorp Vault is a fantastic product. It's open source. But it's cumbersome to set up. There are alternatives out there. And I think you really just need to look at your situation and what features you're looking at. Is it acceptable to have a SaaS platform manage your secrets, such as what Achilles does? Or do you need to have control over that data and so on? So here's a great question. That I see that you've already seen this. That it does Promyze detect any best practices that was not followed on its own, or does it need to be trained with some examples? So, I mean, what I like about this is that I think this illustrates kind of the partnership between GitGuardian and Promyze. Is that you know, like where there's setting up best practices and be able to share these and find out, and then also using tools like GG-Shield to be able to kind of detect when these, in case of secrets, have you know. Do you have more to add to that? I know you're looking for an example in that. Is there any more to add about the kind of Promyze solution to this question?
No, I think you're completely right, and indeed we're providing some recommendations for developers while they are coding. But then clearly, with GG-Shield and GitGuardian in general, you have clearly really highly efficient solutions to detect some best practices related to security leaks. And so for other kind of best practices, Promyze we just need some example at least once to start providing recommendation for other topics like clean code or something like this.
Great. Yeah, that's really cool. So another question that we have in there, do you consider HSMs as vaults? So HSM stands for hardware security module. Something anyway, it's a physical piece of hardware that encrypts information. So the answer to this is kind of, I would consider it possibly a component of a vault or even a secrets management system. So for instance, AWS has what they call their virtual HSM. So where I'm and to be honest, I'm not actually sure about the inner grittings of what products do what, but I believe that AWS does have hardware components in how they store their secrets. So would I consider the HSM? I wouldn't consider it a vault, and a vault is a category that I kind of made up based on some more advanced features because they all had the kind of word vault in them. So I think this comes down to what features would be important for you and what would you consider. So I would consider if a HSM, I mean, if you're really serious about some encrypted information, then you're probably going to want to have some hardware components in there. And then you can actually integrate these into different areas. You can integrate this as part of your vault for using HashiCorp, for example. But I would consider it a component of and not necessarily a vault in and itself. All right. Will the session have a recording available later? Yes, we will. You will be able to listen to the session after. Okay. So Promyze still doesn't stop developers to share credentials on Slack or any third-party applications, right? So Cédric, I know. So this is again, this is kind of about the combination between what Promyze and GitGuardian can do. Is that
Yes,
yeah,
completely. Yeah.
You need the tools to be able to share best practices, so everyone knows what to do. Because no point in putting in place tools where no one knows what to do. And then you need to have something else that will be able to detect these. So this is something that GitGuardian Shield, GG Shield, or GitGuardian can do, is be able to detect these credentials when they're shared. We have an API, so if you want to be able to create a Slack bot or something that scans your Slack messages, you can do this using the GitGuardian API, and we have a free tier and all of that. All right. I think we've got down to the... Oh, here we are. One last question. When should we use vaults and not secrets managers that do not dynamically change the secret keys? So, yeah. So firstly, I think it's important to kind of say that not all secrets can be dynamically changed. What you need is a service. So AWS is a perfect example of that, where you can have let's call it a master key that can create other access tokens. So first of all, we can't always do this. So we're not, and I think like when should we use a service that does this and when should we not? It's a very challenging question. If you set up a secrets manager correctly, and we do all this, then you're already taking a huge step into kind of managing your credentials for that. So is it like vital that we use dynamic secrets? It's better, but it's, if we're moving from storing them in a .env file in a private Git repository and we get to secrets manager, then we're already taking a good step along the way, and we can already implement really good practices for that. So I think that's so I mean, a kind of a political answer in a way, I guess. I guess there for that. So that's what we can do. Now, I think it's important to note that Promyze has a 30-day free trial. Is that correct,
Yes,
Cédric? I'm not telling
correct.
lies.
If you want to give it
great to check out, especially to try to see if you can share these best practices throughout. It's certainly going to speed up that education process when you're using it. And if you're going to invest the time into setting up these complicated secrets management systems, not all of them are, not all of them have to be, but important to be able to share the best practices of how to actually use them. So make sure that you're signing up for the Promyze 30-day free trial to check out from there. So there is, I have created a keep learning page and a takeaway sheet. So Ziad, my man in the chat, if you could share the link to the takeaway sheet or the takeaway page, that would be great. So then everyone can check that out and be able to kind of continue on. If you're interested to learn more about Promyze, if you're interested to know more about secrets inside Git or what GitGuardian does or how you can set up a pre-commit hook, I kind of compiled a curated learning list, if you will, in there that you may be interested to check out. So Ziad's posted that in the chat for everyone that's interested. All right. It is that time. It is time to announce the winner of the swag bag. So I think that we should have a solution to that. Let me open up my analytics page and find out for one minute about where I'm building the extents. I'm building the suspense. So the winner of the swag bag is Rahul Luther. I'll post this in the chat here of the winner. So congratulations. If you could send me a message to my email address, It is. This is I'll post it in here, andy.jackson@gitguardian.com. And I'll message you directly, and we can organize where that's sent to. So congratulations, Rahul. And I hope you enjoy your prize there. So we have another webinar planned already. So this one is going to be on the 8th of December. November can be a bit of a busy time for holidays. And this is going to be about maintaining code security through code quality. And we're going to be doing this with Ponycode. So it's going to be an awesome chat. You can already register for that now. So that'd be great if you guys can do that and add that to your calendar. And other than that, I want to thank you, Cédric, for being here. I just realized I'm not sharing my screen. So hang on. I'll put the advertisement up.
Yeah.
So
by the way,
Cédric,
we have a last question. I don't know if you saw.
No. Let's do it. Last question.
From Vincent. Should you sell to management the implementation of a secrets management solution first versus selling a secrets detection solution first?
So I think I really interesting question. I think what Vincent's saying is that which should come first? Should you manage your secrets or should you detect them? And I think that you should manage secrets first. Get together a really good secrets management system together and have a good way of best practices, and then you need to layer on top of that secrets detection. But I mean, it's very important to make sure that you have that all set up as well, because the whole point is to be able to try and discover where and when secrets have leaked, but then we need a way to be able to prevent this in the future. And without a secrets management system, then we're not going to be able to do that. So yeah, I mean, interesting point. What should you do first? I mean, the first thing to do is to always set up your secrets management system. But I mean, if you're a small team, setting up secrets detection, it takes about 5 minutes. It's very simple to kind of put that measure in place. So I wouldn't categorize it as if what first. And I think that, I mean, particularly with GitGuardian, we have free tiers for small teams under 25 developers. So if you fit into that, then you can get our full business plan for free, and it's very easy to set up. So I mean, not to turn into a salesman, but yeah, but definitely, I mean, of course, set up your secrets management system first and have best practices in place. So yeah, well, anyway, guys, that concludes the webinar. So thank you so much for tuning in. Congratulations, Rahul, and I'll send you a message directly and get that swag bag delivered to you. Thanks again, Cédric, and have a great night, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you again, Mackenzie and GitGuardian, for the invitation. See you soon.